Hello, and welcome to the Balance and Blissful Energies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Hechavarria, and today I am quite excited to have Craig Meriwether with us. He is the founder of Sacred Mystery. He offers hypnotherapy for spiritual healing through past life regression, spirit world exploration, and deeper connections with spirit guides and ancestors in private virtual sessions, group sessions, workshops, and retreats. His newest release, Past Lives Guidebook, opens a doorway into the science and spirituality of past life regression. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Elizabeth, how are you? It's good to talk with you. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for joining. So I'd love to open it with a little bit about your background, how you got into hypnotherapy. And I understand it's been many years now doing this. So you can give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, real quick, I got into hypnotherapy through my own healing, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression growing up. And it was just in terms of looking for something that could help, tried a lot of different things. And in the 90s, late 90s, there's a lot of personal growth kind of stuff happening. Tony Robbins and becoming super popular, and a lot of different books coming out for self-growth. And a lot of those books, and as the internet was really coming online back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you could actually hear interviews and lectures and workshops and things. And a lot of them were talking of the 4 or 5 things you could do to change your life. And one of them was always hypnotherapy. And so since the people I was kind of following, I was using their models to help, create change in my life and to create that deeper healing. A lot of them were talking about hypnotherapy. And so I used it in my own life, found deeper healing by tapping into the power of my own subconscious mind. And I was also fascinated also at the same time as my world was opening up to different spiritual philosophies and theories and practices. And part of that opening was past lives and reincarnation. And the two kind of melded, as you can use a lot of these techniques to help you go even into a deeper state and access memories of past lives. And so I did some training at a wonderful school, Hypnotherapy Academy of America, which is 500 hours of just straight education and training in hypnotherapy. And the last module that they do, the last 2 weeks that they're doing, is past life regression. And so I specifically picked that school because not only did I want that, great foundation of the healing work that hypnotherapy can do, but then it also, they, show you how to move into the deeper realms and create even deeper healing. That's what it's all about, really, is the healing that you can achieve within your subconscious mind, but also within the spiritual aspect of it as well. And while, of course, past life regression, there's can be for fun, for more insights about who you've been, the threads that maybe connect different lives together. Certainly discovering those aspects of yourself can provide great insights and can be fun just to discover, just like discovering your genealogy. But the big foundation of all this work is the healing that can happen.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of, you mentioned in your life you had healing related to anxiety and depression, but what are some powerful examples that you can start off sharing with us?
Mm-hmm. Did you want like just in hypnotherapy or past life regression itself?
Well, I guess specifically past life regression. We can go into hypnotherapy in general, but since we started talking about past life regression even before we started recording, let's go there. Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating aspect of life because it's sort of this idea of you have this soul family, and a lot of the protocols and the work I do is based on the research of Michael Newton, and that's found in his books Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And what's fascinating about Michael Newton, and he passed away I think about 2011, but back in 1969, he, as a psychotherapist, he was working with somebody and wanting to regress them back to childhood to deal with some issues in this person's life. Using hypnotherapy, he regressed them, supposedly to childhood and to resolve these issues. The guy kept going, and he went past childhood. He went past being a newborn. He went past being in utero. He went all the way back to that soul state, that soul realm, what Dr. Michael Noonan eventually described as the life between lives. And it's when we're in this soul state before we're having this life here on earth. And this guy, the person he was working with, did some great healing work there. And so this was very fascinating to Dr. Noonan. And so he started working with people, seeing if other people could also experience this state, this realm. And he developed a protocol to help people get into this state. And as he was working with people, he was finding that people were having similar experiences of the soul state, soul realm of being back in this life between lives. And this is 1970s. Of course, there's no texting between people. There's no emails. There's no internet where they could share all this information. They didn't know each other. They're from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ethnicities, different ages, and they're having similar experiences. And so he starts doing this research with thousands of people, 365 days a year over the course of all the 70s and the 80s. He worked with thousands and thousands of people. And all his research that he did over the course of 2 decades was put in the book Journey of Souls, which came out in 1992. And he did another decade's worth of research. And all that research with the thousands of people he worked with in the came out in 2001, 2002 in Destiny of Souls. And even so, he developed the Michael Newton Institute, and they've been continuing his work and his research. I think they just released a book last year or the year before. It's this state of being back in the soul where a lot of this healing work can happen. Certainly discovering a past life or the insights you can gain from that can create great relief, can even resolve a lot of issues, but it's being in that soul state where you can reset yourself and recharge and even ask for help, whether through spirit guides or other spirit beings that may be with you in that experience. But we have this soul group with us and this soul family, our soul mates. And sort of like if you get dropped into first grade and you just continue on to getting your master's degree with this group of souls, group of people. And it's not unlike a theater group that, you're in your local community theater group. And it's this group of 8 actors, and they decide what plays are going to do and who's going to play what role. And they decide, well, in January, we're going to do this play, and this is how the characters are going to learn and grow. And so by the end of the play, all the characters have evolved to a certain extent, and they've all learned, or there's characters who help other characters learn, and who's going to play what role, what costumes are we going to wear, and they all do that play. And then they take a break, and then in March, they decide to do another play. And they switch, they all have different roles. They wear different costumes. These characters are learning different things because it's an entirely different storyline in a different time. And while not the greatest analogy in the world, it kind of gives you the idea, this is what we're doing here. And this is, again, based on the work of Michael Newton and the 50 years of research the Michael Newton Institute and Michael Newton himself has done, that we're coming to this world, to this earth, maybe even to other worlds, to learn and to grow and to heal and to help each other. And again, it's sort of like just going from first grade all the way to getting your master's degree. And maybe we have to start, if we're learning math, with 2 + 2 = 4. And then in the second grade, we are going into our times tables. And then the third grade is long division, fourth grade is fractions, all the way we're getting to high school. And we're learning algebra and algebra 2 and calculus and trigonometry, to getting our master's degree in mathematics. We're doing the crazy equations on the chalkboard. Well, we're growing and learning through all of that. And we have to start at the very basics and grow. And so sometimes these lives have threads through them and connections to each other. And maybe we're also connecting that hurt and pain we may have experienced in a past life. Or maybe the past life we didn't do so well, and we need to repeat a grade, or go to summer school, or get tutoring, or something. Or maybe there's just various ways of learning, our times tables. And so, okay, well, we learned it this way. What if we throw this wrench into it next time? And this is how we all learn and grow. And so they repeat the experiment to see if they get the same results. And so the idea is that if we're repeating this, we may be holding on to old hurt and pain, because a lot of growth can happen through stress, through tension, and we've oftentimes go through extraordinary hurt and pain. And so it's that ability to understand what has happened that can create relief, but also the ability to disconnect the cords. And so you can find great relief from anxiety and anger or even deep fears. But one of the most amazing ones that I experienced working with somebody was that she healed 20 years of chronic hip pain. And so generally when we're doing this kind of work, whether it's hypnotherapy for an issue within this life, or we're doing some of the deeper work in a past life regression, or going to soul world, that spirit world exploration, we're thinking of emotional pain, or we're thinking of maybe mindset issues around anxiety or anger or loss. But I was working with somebody, and as we go through a past life, of course, if you live to be 90 years in that past life, we can't go through all 90 years in the time that we have. Even if we're doing a longer session, that 3.5 hours, we can't go through all 90 years of that life. So we're going to go through 4 or 5 significant and important events in that life that have to do with what you're looking to discover, the issue you're looking to resolve. And you get to the end of that life. That's where a lot of the emotions and thoughts, you hold on to them at the end and maybe connect to this life or even another life. Then you move up into the soul world. As your soul leaves the body, you move up into that soul state. And that's where the healing can happen. That's where you can let go of that stuff. Well, we're in that healing space. And in and of itself, I'm working with people, we're having a conversation, even if they're in that deep trance state. They're still having a conversation with me to help guide and lead and understand their experience, also for the recording so they can listen to it later and remind themselves of the experience they have. You're doing 3 hours. We're doing one of the longer sessions. It's like watching a 3-hour movie. You watch the movie, but maybe a few weeks later, you're starting to forget this part, you forget that part. Well, you have the recording. Well, you can listen to it again, or the transcript, at least go through the transcript and remind yourself of the experience you had. Well, you have to have a conversation. So, and also just to make sure their ecology is okay, they're doing well. And she never mentioned anything about hip pain. It was just something she lived with at that point. She'd been to all the doctors, had the MRIs, had the x-rays, then the physical therapy, did everything. There's no reason for this hip pain. She just lived with it. She even tell me about it. Well, in the healing space, she's doing her healing work, and that's somewhat of a private thing. So I give them space and time to do the healing work they need. And she felt a big cord attached to her hip, and she tried to pull it out and she couldn't. And she's telling me this in an email that she wrote to me a few days later. And she asked her guide to help pull it out. Guide couldn't pull it out either. And so she asked the other healing beings. They all kind of gathered around. They did one of those tug of war things. They all kind of just pulled on this cord and finally pulled it out. And her 20 years of hip pain were gone. That's how I open up the book, the Best Lives Guidebook. I open up with that phrase. I always check in with people a few days after. How are they doing? Any questions? I love to hear people's stories. And she told me it's like 20 years of hip pain is totally gone.
That's amazing.
And so that's one of the more extreme examples of what can happen. But it's not just releasing the hurt and the pain you may have held on to, maybe for many lifetimes, but it's also potentially people have gained great physical relief as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it goes back to the books like of Ian Stevenson and some of the others, that when they're looking at reincarnation or past lives, and there's birthmarks that link to maybe somebody having been shot or an illness or scars or things that people were born with that link up to old injuries and things. It's like, well, not only can you may have a marker on your body, you may still have the physical pain as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally had one, I've had several past life regressions. One of them was around hip pain. And yeah, and I did find an associated lifetime, did the healing under hypnosis, and it eased it. It wasn't 100% relief, but I think it was maybe about 70%. And then the rest went away over like gradually over the next few weeks, but I had struggled with that pain for a year and a half by that point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty extraordinary the links and connections we may have. And this isn't everybody's story, of course. Again, that's a pretty rare example of what can happen. But the important part and the focus I always bring to it is the healing that can be achieved. Even if somebody, again, just coming for insight and discovery, maybe they read Brian Weiss or they Michael Noon or Dolores Cannon,
Right.
just exciting and it's new and it's very, very fascinating. And they read other people's stories of their past lives and say, well, I wonder what my experiences would be. That's an extraordinarily valid and worthwhile way of doing this work. But the focus is still, is there any healing that needs to be accomplished,
Hmm.
known or unknown? And what's fascinating about that story is she never really understood what the hip pain was about. It was just that there was this big cord attached to her hip. Just let it go.
Hmm.
If the coat is uncomfortable, you don't have to understand who made the coat, where it came from, why it was even in your closet in the first place. Why do you keep wearing it? Why are all these rocks in the pocket?
Right.
Just take off the
Take
coat.
it off. Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
you just take off the coat. And that's sometimes with this work too. Uh,
Right.
again, while it's fascinating to kind of see the links and the threads, sometimes
Yeah.
healing just needs to happen.
Yeah. And you mentioned, okay, so healing, there's like the healing that's the emotional healing. There can also be some psychological blocks that could be healed as well,
Mm,
right?
sure, yeah. Yeah. I live up in the mountains of Flagstaff, Arizona. We're about 7,000 feet up in here in the high desert near the Grand Canyon, about 40 minutes east of Sedona, Arizona, if people know where that is. And it gets quite cool. We get snow in the winter down to freezing. And I say that because if somebody's born here and never left, let's say they're born in the 1960s or 1970s, so there's no internet and there's not all that stuff. And they have a deep fear of the ocean, of deep ocean water. They have an extraordinary fear, phobia of ocean water. Even though they're born in the high mountains of Arizona, have never seen the ocean even. There may be links to maybe a past life. Now, again, it's not always the case, but it's also a head scratcher of all the things to be afraid of. Why are you afraid of something you've never experienced? Maybe you've never seen movies or TV shows about it. And why would somebody born in the mountains of Arizona in the middle of the country is never even close to the ocean be afraid of the ocean? And there's other aspects of that in terms of fears and phobias, but also just mindset issues around life itself. Is life fair or unfair? Is love fair or unfair? Is life hard or easy? Is wealth easy to come by? And this goes into a deeper conversation even around the law of attraction. If you're here specifically to understand what it is to maybe not have that wealth, I don't know that all the law of attraction books are going to help you. And it becomes a big head scratcher and a big
Hmm.
mind twister too, because you see other people accessing that powerful realm of law of attraction or law of repulsion. And you try and you try and try. It's like, well, what if you're here to learn in a certain way? What if the role you're playing in this play this time around is maybe not the rich person? Maybe that was last time. Yeah, that's the play you did in January. And this play in March, you're doing an entirely different role. So the character can learn in a different way. And so by changing the rules and changing the storyline, the plot line, by accumulating that wealth, would that prevent you from learning? And would you then not have to just do it again?
Yeah.
Repeat the grade, repeat the show, repeat the play, or have to do it in some different way. And it becomes quite mind twisty. Trying to wrap your head around a lot of this. It makes for a fun, afternoon conversation over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, but um, it can be, quite fascinating to try and see if there are any links these past lives and what you may be here to learn. And that's a big part of that spirit realm exploration that we do. Is there's lots of different aspects of that Michael Newton talks about in his books, but we always, go to the healing place, whatever that is for you. And we always go to the kind of current life selection room, if you will, and find out more about purpose and more about ultimate goals and mission and why these people in your life. Why is your mother the way she is? And what are you here to learn because your mother is the way she is, or your father, or your brothers and sisters, or these friends that you have in your life? What are you here to learn with them? And it all may seem a little different if you were to have 5 or 6 people who had past life regressions within a week or so of each other, and you sat them down in a room. They may have had different experiences of the soul realm, because I think this brain of ours has to translate all that extraordinary information into a way that we're going to understand it and feel comfortable with. But again, if you focus on the healing and that information around purpose and mission that can help you move forward in this life, then it's quite an extraordinary experience.
And when I haven't been in this life between life state yet, I want to through hypnosis during this lifetime still. But do people experience, in addition to just getting information, do they also experience certain feelings in their body, like a certain warmth maybe, or a love, like an unconditional love, part of the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, people have different experiences, kind of just how this CD brain of ours is pulling in this D information, if you will. No, I'm not using that in the right way, but if you experience the experience that we're having is we're pulling in all this information from somewhere else. And again, that's a whole long, wonderful conversation. That's a lot of what the book's about. The Past Lives Guidebook is about the science and reality and time and memory and consciousness. And is this a holographic universe, or is it a computer simulation, and all that wonderful stuff that's fun to talk about. But in terms of the experience, again, we're kind of pulling in this extraordinary information from soul world, from the spirit realm, from this life between lives. We're taking this 5D information through this fire hose of information, through this funnel into this 3D brain, and it has to translate it. And it may have to make some accommodations so we understand it well. And when I take people to the healing place, when they're in the life between lives, they may experience that healing like they're actually in some sort of futuristic medical center. Other people may see it like they're in a garden. Other people may just be like this energy experience, or maybe it's with water or light, or some other way. Maybe they're by themselves, maybe they're a spirit guide, maybe they're other healing beings. And so they experience this healing of their maybe emotions or mindset, or even a physical healing, or maybe a spiritual kind of recharge or reboot, if you will. But I'm going to guess there's probably not water up in spirit world. But it's a way for them to have that experience in this 3D brain of ours. It has to translate this information, just like a TV, at least one of the old school TVs, has that transducer in it. And so you turn your TV on at whatever Thursday at 9:00 to watch Cheers, and the antennas start vibrating to pull in this one frequency of all the radio signals and TV signals and microwaves and all this stuff going on, let alone nowadays with Wi-Fi and cell towers and all that. But you're pulling in one signal, because otherwise, if you just turn on your radio and you got all 150 radio stations, that's going to be a lot of noise. So you want to focus on one signal. And so this 3D brain of ours is pulling in this one signal, and it's got to translate this information somehow. So we get pictures, you get sounds. And it's kind of a long answer to your short question, but people will experience it in different ways. And we all have these 5 senses. And maybe some people are more kinesthetic, and they're more of a touchy-feely experience in life. And smells are very prominent to them and really bring them back into memories when they have a certain smell. Other people may be more auditory. Some people may be more visual. We know about this in school. There's auditory learners, there's visual learners, aesthetic learners. And these aspects all help bring in that information. And we do a warm-up exercise when we're doing this work. We do a warm-up exercise to warm up those five senses and just to show people, you know, if you haven't done this work before, it's quite extraordinary and you're able to do it. Everyone's able to do this work.
That was going to be my question, actually. Is there any belief system or anything that could make this work difficult?
Oh, yeah. You could believe it doesn't work. So what are the chances is it going to work?
Right.
You-
Okay.
If I believe that ships don't float, what are the chances are I'm going to get on a ship? Oh, it's like, well, I don't believe that works, so I'm not going to get on a boat. And so same with this, if you don't believe, one, that you can move into this more meditative, relaxed mind and body known as hypnosis or the daydreamy state or alpha brainwave state or whatever you want to call it, if you don't believe you can do it and you don't believe in reincarnation or past lives, what are the chances that you're going to have an experience? You actually might have one, but if you're going to block yourself, and what's fascinating, again, it's a little bit mind twisty, but people will hypnotize themselves into believing that they can't be hypnotized
Mm-hmm.
and then insist that they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Even creative healing. I've had people have experiences, and even in past life regression, and then deny it afterwards. I mean, I was like, I have the recording. I'll play it for you. You were having this experience. I was helping walk you through it. And then at the end, it's like, well, I didn't have that. Wasn't real because it went beyond what they were able to maybe digest because of how they grew up, because of the philosophies and the theories of the spirituality they grew up in. It didn't fit that paradigm.
Yeah.
And so just like, well, no, then it didn't happen.
There's a cognitive dissonance there.
Yeah. Even though they actually experienced it, I walked them through it for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I have the recording of it that I'll send to them and I could read them the transcript of it. They said, no, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really this idea that the brain is more of antenna and a receiver transfer. Memory is not held within the brain there, and consciousness is non-local. Consciousness does not live in this house of the skull of our head, and therefore consciousness is everywhere. Again, that goes back to the multiverse or holographic universe theory or computer simulation theory, all these different theories of reality. But if consciousness is not held within the brain is actually acting as a receiver and a transmitter and an antenna. And therefore, that's how you're pulling in all this information. Maybe short-term memory of what you had for lunch yesterday and the meeting that you had at work or the homework you got to do for school. But in terms of even issues around, okay, what happened in high school and what happened when you were a little kid on past life regression, that memory may not be held within the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Accessing it by pulling it in. Well, and we could talk about various aspects of the brain, like the pineal gland and things like that. It becomes quite extraordinary and quite mind-bendy and mind-twisty when you think of, well, memory's not held, and what am I pulling this from? It's kind of like you have these books of your life, like the Encyclopedia Britannica, if people remember those back in the 70s and 80s. We had this 34-volume set of A to Z. That was our internet. And it's just like, there it is. And it's like, if that's all your lives, it's like, oh, I just want to pick a book and just start looking. It's like, well, it's not in your brain. Just like, here's my, I have all the information in the world.
Right.
Here,
right.
but it's not
That's a
held
good
within
analogy. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the information of the world is not held within my actual phone, but I can access it through this by tapping into the frequencies and pulling it in. And then I can see it, whether it's a movie or I'm reading something or being shown something. And it's the same idea. The information of the world, of the universe is not held within the brain, but we have the ability to access. And maybe some people have a higher bandwidth than others.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you get, people who are really skilled at being a medium or a psychic or can channel or these other things. And I know there's aspects of that where people kind of fake their way into it, which is unfortunate because there's people who have real talent around that and real skill. And just like I can play the cello, and Elizabeth, you can play the cello, maybe not well, but you can take
It would sound horrible.
And you can like put your fingers in a chord and pull the strings. It's like you're playing the cello.
True.
But we're not Yo-Yo Ma.
No.
And so people may have, and like people can remote view or do the kind of lucid dreaming and take themselves to other worlds and things like this. I think we all have a capability of doing an aspect of that, but there may be people who are more skilled and more talented, maybe just the way the brains were formed, or maybe this is what they chose this time around or some other way. But I think we all actually have the ability to do this work if you believe that you have the ability to do it.
If you're open to it, basically. So in my experience, I could remain conscious, if that makes sense. My everyday awareness was there and remembered what was going on, what I was seeing, because mostly it's a visual thing for me, visual, and I would say there's a sense of feeling as well. And is that typical that you go through a hypnotherapy session? Because I always, before I ever did it, I thought, oh, hypnosis, you don't remember anything. You're like, the stage shows where you're like, lift your hand up and hop on one foot, that kind of thing. What is your experience with this? With your method, at least, how you take people in?
You definitely want you to be conscious of it because, again, it's about the healing. If you're not conscious of what needs to be healed, even if it's just a feeling or the noticing a cord attached to your hip or something, you need to be consciously aware of that. So going into some theta brainwave state where you're kind of sleepy and not really awake is not helpful. It may be helpful when giving suggestions and, day by day in every way, you're getting better and better, those kind of suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
That might be helpful in a deeper trance state. And when I say trance state, we're in these altered states of consciousness, really it's just the brainwave states. And then kind of 4 famous one we learned about in school were beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Beta being consciousness. It's basically just how fast your brain is operating, how fast the brain cells are communicating to each other. And in the beta brainwave state, this is consciousness in this present moment. You're focused, you're grounded, you're centered, and you're firing about 18 cycles per second, somewhere around there. And then when you get in that daydreamy state, maybe remember back in high school math class or that meeting at work last week or something, you just kind of like start kind of daydreaming. You start staring out the window and you're thinking, well, the weekend's coming up and how much fun you're going to have. And you've altered your state of consciousness. You got bored. And even, watching a TV show, and you get bored because you're bored of the show. And your mind just starts to drift away into the future, into the past. You've altered your state of consciousness. You've moved down into the alpha brainwave state. You're so conscious, so consciously aware of your surroundings. You're sitting in math class, you're at work, whatever, you're on the couch watching a dumb show. But you've altered your state of consciousness to the point of you've slowed down how fast the brain is communicating to the cells of your brain. So it's something we do all the time. This is just a natural process of being human. We dip down in that alpha brainwave state a lot during the day. And all we do in hypnosis is just take advantage of that. And so you're consciously aware. We want you consciously aware, especially when we're doing the deeper healing work. It's not helpful to just I'm going to count from 5 down to 1. And on 1, you'll be totally unconscious. And then 4 and 5, now you're conscious again. So, well, what happens? I created healing for you. Oh, you did? Okay, I guess. It's like, what if you were actually the one doing the work? And that's where this is so powerful. You're the one having the experience. You're the one doing the healing work. Whether it's this present life, just using therapeutic hypnosis, or it's a deeper work of maybe past life regression and spirit world exploration, you're having an experience. And that's why you can talk to me. If I was to ask somebody, I want you to close your eyes and just tell me about the last time you went to a restaurant or a cafe, whether that was yesterday, last week, last month. Tell me about a time when you went out and maybe had coffee with a friend or you had dinner, and tell me about the restaurant, the cafe, what did it look like? How did it feel in there? Was it busy? Was it, non-peak hours? What'd you have? What'd you talk about? You're having a memory.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're in an altered state of consciousness because you've slowed down to be in the alpha brainwave state to access that memory in the past, you can still talk with me. And now tell me about high school. Did you do sports? Did you play music? Were you in the theater? group where you smoking cigarettes outside, behind the gym. Prom. Did you go to prom? What did you wear? Who did you go with? Who was prom queen? Who was prom king? These are memories you're accessing. Again, through this altered state of consciousness of being in the alpha brainwave state, all we do in past life regression, we go a bit further. And so right now we're kind of in the shallow end of the pool, asking about lunch last week, asking about high school, maybe with your earliest memory at 8 years old or 5 years old or 2 years old. Well, all we're going to do is go into the deep end of the pool. It's the same pool. We're just going to go over to the deep end of the pool and access even further back into a past life and then the memories of being up in the soul world. So you need to be conscious of it because I want to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not only just to help kind of facilitate and guide and make sure you're okay, because of what if you get dropped into the war zone?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to sit back and twiddle my thumbs and hope you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're having a real intense experience, maybe that needs some guidance and facilitation. Maybe you need to be drawn out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to pull out of that. I need that to go dark. I need the movie to be over. And now let's move to another event that is more pleasant
Mm-hmm.
and more full in or whatever it needs to be. And then moving into that last day of that life and then moving into the soul world, we're having conversations. I want to know what it feels like to you to be in soul state. I want to know who's greeting you at the gateways to soul world. Is it your soul family? Is it just one person? Is it your spirit guide? And there's also an aspect of this work, especially when we get to the soul world. It's very pleasant. You were talking about feelings and things. It can be very calm and peaceful. You may have sensations and feelings you haven't experienced before or have in a long time. May feel very familiar, but a very warm and friendly, loving realm. And it's sort of like sitting in a jacuzzi. You don't want to get out of the jacuzzi. You just want to sit in the jacuzzi and hang out with your friends. Like, okay, well, we can do that for a little bit, but we need to move on. We need to go to the healing place. We need to find out more about your purpose in this life and the current life selection. I mean, there's other places to go.
Yeah.
And so that's also helpful. It's like, well, if you get stuck sitting in the jacuzzi because it's warm and bubbly and wonderful, it's like, okay, well, have that experience for a moment, but we need to move on and I need you to move to the next experience you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the communication back and forth comes in. And I'm guessing, just having my own experience with past lives and telling somebody about it, you're probably only explaining 20% at the most, probably 10% of the experience. Well, I seem to be in a home and there's a couch with a kind of a velvety pattern and some books on the shelf. Okay, well, that kind of explains it a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so they explain, but I'm guessing, they're only given 10 just from my own experience and just the vague descriptions of things sometimes people give. But they're only explaining a little bit, but it's enough for them later down the road to remind themselves of what it looked like and so they can continue analyzing it, their information.
And I have a question actually about going back there later after the session, right? Or if it's necessary, can people go back into either a previous lifetime or into this life between lives stage with certain guided meditations or certain instructions that you give them? Yeah.
Oh, you mean like using a recording or?
Yeah. Or do you offer, I think I saw on your website that you offer like a guided meditation or something for past life or for, I don't know, for some type of hypnosis. There are certainly hypnosis tapes out there, but specifically for the type of work that you do.
Yeah, you can use recordings. You can do it on your own. Again, it's just sort of like if you're on your own and you want to remember high school, you can do that on your own. And there are recordings. I have recordings on my website about past lives to focus on your purpose or healing or connecting with your soulmate and things like that. But it's also a very kind of generalized experience.
Yeah.
Because that recording has to be made for multiple people. Of course, people can do this on their own. The thing with doing it on your own, you may just forget the questions you wanted to ask. Because you'll write them all down. I have people send me a list of questions or people they want to, know more about in terms of if they're their primary soulmate or they've had other experiences in past lives with these people in their life. because you get into that altered state of consciousness, you get down that alpha brainwave state, and it's a lovely place to be. It can be very relaxing and restful and rejuvenating, but it also your mind flutters away. So you may forget those questions you wanted to ask. You may forget all the people you wanted to focus on. And again, you may get stuck in the jacuzzi because it's so wonderful and so amazing. How about I just sit in the jacuzzi?
Well, it's not
Fine.
bad, right? Go
Fine
relax a little bit in the
experience.
jacuzzi.
Yeah, it's fine to hang in the jacuzzi. But if your goal was to find healing, if your goal was to find out some answers, some resolution to some questions or some solutions, and you just get stuck in the jacuzzi, it's like, well, then you didn't really fulfill uh, your goal for the session. And that's where a facilitator working one-on-one comes in. You can do this on your own. You can do this with a recording, maybe even make a recording for yourself that can be very specific on where you want to go or how you want to line it up or something. But also the main issue with working with a facilitator or a guide who's been highly trained is that they can help you if something goes awry in terms of you are dropped down into the war zone or the fun experience you're looking for on that afternoon becomes really intense.
Mm-hmm.
A story in the book I wrote, this comes from my training. One of the teachers who was doing, and this was just kind of an off, waiting for class to start again, everybody to come back from the bathroom and just chit-chatting. He was talking about how when he was being trained to do hypnotherapy and past life regression, is like 1990, 1991. He was telling his friends, like, oh, I'm going to learn hypnotherapy. I'm training with all these people. I'm going to learn past life regression. And his friends are, oh, my ex-wife did past life regression. And she went up just to have fun and have an experience, read the Brian Weiss book and thought this would be a fun experience to have. And the past life she went to was a kind of a Middle Ages, medieval kind of experience. And she was kind of creating the resistance movement, the Rebel Alliance in her community because of the authority figures and kind of clamping down and everything, boot on the neck kind of thing. And she had a very loud mouth, and she was one of the, resistant movement leaders. And so they arrested her and threw her in jail. And this is in the past life as she's experiencing, threw her in this medieval jail where they tortured her and starved her to death. And that was fun past life she had. And she's having this intense experience of being started. It was a horrible way to be tortured to death. And she realized that the jailer, the person in charge of torturing her to death, was her husband in this life. And they divorced like a month later.
Oh my gosh.
And because there's no healing there's no resolution to that, and literally destroyed lives. And I'm going to guess there's some other issues in that relationship, probably. But at the very least, it was the final straw. It's like, okay, and you did this to me too in a past life. You're with me all the time, making my life miserable. I was like, and this is the lengths you're going to, it snowballed to the point where it destroyed the relationship. Whereas if that person had been trained and had the forethought to like, oh, this needs to be resolved, they may have solved a lot. They may have to do this again now. Okay, well, a divorce is like, okay, I guess we got to go to, repeat the grade again. How many times have they been doing this? Maybe this is the first time. Maybe they've been doing it multiple times. But there was no healing. There's no resolution to that experience for them. She just went for a fun afternoon to explore, to get some insights. And she had this intense experience that had no resolution. And there's a divorce decree in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, that describes a past life regression as part of the reasoning for getting a divorce. And it's like literally ruined this relationship. And so that's the importance of this. It's, it can be fun. It can be exciting and very insightful, and it's fun to discover these things. If something does happen, that's where it's nice to have somebody there on your side who can help you resolve the issue or pull you out of it or something like that. So what you can do is recordings, tons of them, on my website, but on YouTube and other places. So you can experiment with this. But the deeper stuff, I always feel like you kind of want somebody on your side who's going to help you through.
Yeah. I mean, and well, I guess my interest in my question was more about like getting to that in-between live state where you have the opportunity to speak with your soul family and with your spirit guides, because a lot of people, I think, crave that, and it would help them gain some deeper insight into behaviors, etc. And one of the ways that you mentioned Dolores Cannon, and I have read some of her books. So one of the ways that she talks about the way she ran her hypnosis sessions was to get to speaking to the subconscious, right? But that was her term for it. But I think that it's the same as what you're saying, like you're having the person relate to you what they're seeing in their past life. Do you think that that's what it is, or do you think that she
Yeah,
was going somewhere else?
I think a lot of it's semantics, and when the books were written,
Yeah.
and what they had, what their understanding of. I mean, we really didn't even get to look at the brain. Like I was doing it, but researchers and neuroscientists really didn't get a good look at the brain until the 1990s, when MRIs became super powerful. You watch a brain in real time. Up until then, all brain research was like sociological experiments and autopsies. But now they have this equipment, SPECT scans and MRIs, and they can watch the brain in real time. So a lot of this stuff is fairly new in terms of understanding the brain, again, the pineal gland, and just even discovering that there's all these crystals in the pineal gland. That's relatively new information. These microscopic, and depending on how old you are, but you're in your midlife of your 40s or so, there's something like 35 to 40,000 crystals in the pineal gland, which is about the size of a grain of rice or the size of a pea. That's extraordinary. We just found that out, 2 years ago or so. And so a lot of this information is coming out. And so when, I think a lot of it's just semantics when somebody says subconscious mind or the unconscious or superconscious level of mind or the higher self. I think it just becomes like your training, your philosophy, the books you've read, and you pick up certain language. And the way Dolores Cannon uses subconscious mind may be different than Milton Erickson and Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud and Michael Newton. They may all have different ways of using that word and their meaning behind it. And so there's this aspect of self, and that we can access, you call it higher self or superconscious level of mind, or, whatever the terminology may be, using the pineal gland, using the third eye, using your inner sight, using the mind's eye. Again, I think it's all kind of describing the same thing. You're just using different terminology. And I think sometimes it gets a little wiggly, just because of maybe somebody was writing back in the 1960s or the 1970s or something like that.
Yeah. But the concept, though, to staying with the whole, subconscious of that iceberg, right? Where our conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg and the subconscious is huge, right? And then maybe even like the collective conscious goes beyond the iceberg itself, right? But if we're using that rubric, that framework, when you're going into past life regressions and into that in-between state, in a way, it's kind of the subconscious, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think a lot of it's semantics, but in terms of dropping down from that beta brainwave state down to the alpha brainwave state. And of course, then, well, what if you moved up higher into the gamma brainwave state where you're firing even faster, like the monks from the Himalayas and the Buddhist monks and people in that flow state? It's like there's all these different altered states of consciousness. And now there's even, the discussion comes that there is no conscious or subconscious. There's just mind. Okay, well, I get what you're saying. And it's an interesting conversation, but in kind of the realm of, let's just do the work. It's like, yeah, let's drop down into that subconscious part of mind, because there is an aspect of mind that we're unconscious of. That's running the immune system, running the digestive system. You have a cut on your finger, you don't have to think about it. It gets healed. You ever had that experience where there's a scrape on your arm and your friend's like, what'd you do your arm there? That's a pretty big scrape. You're like, I have no idea. It was scabbed over. White blood cells got sent to this exact spot to fix the cut, to fix the scrape. created new tissue, created new skin. In a week or so, you're not going to remember it was there. And all these aspects, bringing in all this light through our eyeballs and then turning it into images so we can understand the world around us. It's pretty extraordinary. But we don't have to think about any of this stuff. And so there is an aspect that it's unconscious. It's part of the subconscious mind. And also that part of mind that's holding on to hurt and pain. And again, it's partly as a form of protection to armor ourselves. We don't want to experience it again. So what better way to prevent ourselves from experiencing it than hold on to it and say, does this look like that? Does this like that? Just holding up this picture. This is the hurt and pain I experienced as a kid. I don't want to do it again. But it's also exhausting and maybe not the best way to protect yourself. And that needs to get resolved in some way. And that's just current life stuff, let alone accessing a bigger part of yourself, accessing that soul state. And however that's done, how do people remote view? What part of the brain is being accessed? When somebody remote views and put their consciousness on another part of the planet, you mean underground bunkers and, all sorts of crazy stuff. There's a whole chapter in the book about remote viewing and the experiments the United States government was doing back in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure they're still doing. If it worked, they didn't stop doing it. They said they closed it down in the 90s out of embarrassment, but I'm sure they just changed the name of the program and moved the offices across the hallway.
Right.
If it worked, they'd still be doing it. And they spent millions of dollars over decades researching this remote viewing ESP and getting extraordinary results. Of course, not every time, but they're getting extraordinary results.
And people can train themselves to remote view. Like there are protocols that are published.
Yeah, there's trainings out there. Yeah. When the Freedom of Information Act all came out and people weren't believing it, so a lot of remote viewers started writing books about their experiences. And then it's like, well, how do you get people? That's the Monroe Institute, Robert Monroe, and all his books. They'll show you how to do it. And the only way you can do that is if consciousness is non-local. How is it possible to view another part of the world, let alone, because one of the things with the remote viewers that the government was experimenting with, one that really got the program going was they accidentally found an underground bunker. 2 people found an underground bunker, not working together, but they remote viewed the same underground bunker. One of them even got names of top secret files and the people who worked there, and created quite a little incident between the CIA and the National Security Administration. And because they thought they were viewing their top secret stuff, which they were. And so it's pretty extraordinary that somebody could do that. Now, I don't know, everybody has the ability to go that far, but it seems like we can all play the cello. We're not all yo-yo ma, but the extraordinary thing about that work of remote viewing is they could also move forward and backwards in time. And if you can see the past, well, maybe you can see past lives as well. And so all starts to wrap around each other. And what my hope with the book is that by the end of the book, there's enough evidence to show that not only past lives, we've done this before, but that we have the ability to access that information as well. Again, whether just for insights and discovery, but also for healing.
For healing. And to access gifts, right? So do you have any experience with that where clients would retrieve an ability that they didn't have in this current lifetime?
I've never had that experience, but it's quite fascinating. And especially the whole, what's it called? The savant syndrome, spontaneous savant syndrome, where somebody will get a traumatic brain injury and then wake up out of the coma or out of being unconscious with an entirely new skill that you didn't have before. Now, I've never experienced somebody doing that or helped somebody do that, but and this is very rare, but somebody getting hit in the head with a baseball goes unconscious, comes out of unconsciousness or a coma or car accident or drowning or, almost drowning, and they speak Spanish fluently, or they're a virtuoso piano player, even though they never played before. And so this comes up, well, then how do they get that information? It's like they've just downloaded it, because we thought before that you had to practice and practice and practice, whether it's you're playing the piano or learning a language, you got to practice and practice. And we're creating that muscle memory, especially around sports or music, playing guitar, violin, you're making that muscle memory. Of course, muscles don't have memory, but the idea that we're creating these neural pathways and making them stronger and faster the more we practice. Well, what if that's not what's happening? What if those neural pathways that are getting stronger and faster and thicker and stronger, what if those neural pathways are antennas that are pulling in that information on how to play the piano, on how to speak Spanish, on how to do some extraordinary thing like mathematics?
Mhm.
What if it's not, again, information is not being held within the brain, but you're just creating a stronger receiver of that information?
Mhm.
And someone getting bonked in the head just lighted up this part of the brain to receive that information. Because there can really be no other explanation for it other than just, like you're driving down the street and your car hits a pothole and the radio station just turns over, and now you're hearing this information.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
information is there. You just are
Mhm.
accessing it
Right.
in a different, now you can access this signal as well. And so I would think that maybe you'd be able to do that through a process like hypnosis or something, maybe. But it becomes quite extraordinary because it's that William James quote of one of the pioneers of modern psychotherapy, William James, who said, "To prove that not all crows are black, you only need one white crow." It's like, well, to prove that the brain doesn't hold memory and information, but as a receiver and transmitter, you only need one person to like get bonked on the head with a baseball and all of a sudden can speak a language they never practiced before.
Yeah.
And this isn't to say, if you want to learn Spanish, go run your car into a wall because it's very, very rare that this happens. But it's
And there
happened
are
enough.
easier ways without almost killing
Maybe
yourself.
get the apps. Get the apps if you want to learn language. Don't have your friend throw baseballs at your head. Because it's very, very, very rare that happens.
Mhm.
But it's happened enough that it's a head scratcher. And if like this is how this person's brain works, don't all our brains work exactly the same? Pretty much. So it's that thing. It's like if you can prove somebody's had a past life and we're able to access those memories, and you can prove that through verifiable information, that really only a select few PhDs had in archaeology or history or something. And that's what happened with Brian Weiss in his book, Many Lives, Many Masters. He didn't believe it. He was a left brain analytical academic. That's what he calls himself. He's got a chemistry degree from Columbia. He has a medical degree from Yale. He went into psychiatry. He was working with the person he talks about in his book, Many Lives, Many Masters. He's working with her for a year, dealing with the anxiety she was experiencing. Couldn't find a way through, around, or over how to make it go away. And let's do some hypnotherapy, go back to childhood, see if that creates some resolution. Well, again, like Michael Newton's person, Brian Weiss's person kept going. She went past childhood. She went past being a newborn. She went to a past life. And Brian Weiss didn't believe it. He talks about it in his book. Very analytical, left brain academic, medical doctor. He doesn't believe this. Oh, it's something the subconscious mind is conjuring to manifest this healing. And the thing is, she did heal. She healed her anxiety. And she was also getting verifiable information. This is 1980s. Again, no internet. Getting verifiable information that only like a select few PhD archaeologists should know. And then she also started getting information about Brian Weiss's life, about, a child that died really early. Again, nobody should know this information from the 1970s. There was no obituary. Only a select few family members knew. Even if she was stalking him, there's no way she could have found out this information. So he finally came to the conclusion that the only way she could have had this deep, extraordinary emotional healing was going through a real experience and resolving it and healing it, as well as all this verifiable information, as well as information from Brian White's own life.
Mhm.
He finally came to the conclusion that this has to be real.
Yeah.
And he kind of broke open the modern day past life regression movement with his book that came out in 88, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Yep.
Michael Newton, 1992, Journey of Souls. And it's just kind of,
Taken off from
I think
there.
it's expanded ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a fascinating conversation. Really, thank you so much, Craig, for
You're welcome.
sharing all this with us. I'm super intrigued. Like I said, I've already had past life regressions myself, but I haven't been to that in-between life state, and I want to. So you'll be hearing from me again. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is through the website is Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy, a recording you can download to connect to your spirit guide, which has an aspect of soul world with it. So there's a recording you can download for free if you want to experience more. There's other recordings on there for past life about purpose and healing and soul, your uh, uh, meeting your soulmate and other lives you may have been with your soulmate. But it's also a place you can just get in touch with me, email me, and I'm happy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have the information in the description. And you have a book out as well, you said?
Book is out, yeah, Past Lives Guidebook, and it's more about the science of all this, just like a lot of what we talked about, the consciousness and time and memory and the pineal gland and remote viewing and all this stuff, and putting it all together to show that maybe there is a white crow and that all this stuff is really happening.
Yeah, fascinating. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It was
And
fun.
thank you to all the listeners. If you've enjoyed this interview, this information, please share your thoughts in the comments section. Ask questions. We're answering them. And we'll see you in the next podcast.